Well, if you've been watching what's going on YouTube, there are a lot of people who are too hot to live stream on YouTube. Too hot meaning their takes they're just not sensitive enough for humanity anymore. And I'd like to show you one of these edgy and unacceptable people, Miss Elicia Clegg. Please say hi.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
Is it Miss or Mrs., by the way?
It's Mrs., I guess. I'm Gen X, so it's like Ms.
Okay.
Ms.
well, the whole pronoun thing is like the big thing now, so you don't even talk about the prefix anymore.
Oh, I know. It's terrible.
So for those of you that don't know, Elicia Clegg is on YouTube. She's been kind of in YouTube. You're not allowed to stream right now, correct?
Correct.
So we're hosting her, and as a matter of fact, I do have some questions about some of these topics that she's been discussing on her channel. So, Elicia, could you please describe to me what exactly drove you to start working on YouTube and in general publicizing your views on gender and sexuality?
Wow. I haven't really thought about the whole gender sexuality thing. I think it started when I was having a conversation with a 15-year-old girl online. And she started telling me that gender was a social construct and that there were multiple genders. And it caught me so far aback because, so I'm in a bubble from where I live. Everybody knows I'm from Utah. So we're kind of like in this little beautiful bubble, right? And I homeschool, which puts me in more of a bubble. And I knew that there were ramblings about gender equality and all that stuff. But then when they came right out and said that gender was a social construct and there were numerous genders, it took me for a loop. So then I started researching it, and it was horrifying, especially when you go far enough down the wormhole. You see that it's not some kind of magical, beautiful thing that is meant to free people and to be their authentic self. You find out that it's a way of brainwashing people into conforming and capitulating to some kind of government entity that wants to stamp out all true individualism and wants to stamp out people from being able to speak their mind and speak the truth. So that's why I started speaking out about this issue. Before, my main focus was just on brainwashing and the implications of it. But stumbling upon this type of brainwashing, it still floors me. It floors me, especially because they're coming after the children. Of all things, to come after the children. It's disgusting.
So how about we discuss also the issue of what the other side, they keep saying that if you question transgenderism or if you question homosexuality, you're some sort of bigot. What prior to this, what was your opinion on gender dysphoria or people changing their sex? What was your opinion on gay marriage, and what's your opinion on homosexuals in general? Do you think those are things that are acceptable in modern American society?
Well, so Gen X, right? I don't have an issue with gay people. I don't have, it never really crossed my mind. I mean, why do I care what people are doing in their bedroom, right? And the legalized marriage thing, it never dawned on me. It was never an issue. It never had been an issue. And so as far as the problem is that this isn't, I don't even know why the gays and the lesbians are even with the Qs, right? So you've got, what do we have now? We've got lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, agender, ally, curious, pansexual, polysexual, friend, two-spirit, kink, right? And so what I saw with like the gay people is that they just didn't want it to be, they didn't want to go to jail. That's
so
how
they left out the Autobots and the Decepticons.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these are the ones that they're teaching for right now. This is just so what are these considered? These are considered their sexualities, but we have 330 genders. And then I made a video of the 95 third-party personal pronouns, and it's ridiculous. And these poor, I always thought something was weird with the Q. So the Q that took over the T's, and then we know the feminists are just, the hardcore feminists are beyond pissed off. But yeah, it never seemed like an issue to me with the gay and the lesbian. It never was an issue. And then all of a sudden it was like, boom, everything was an issue all at once. It seemed to happen all at once.
So for those of you watching, me and Elicia, I think we've been in communication for like a week and a half. I don't really know you that well, but so how about, does a church that you belong to form any of your opinion on this, or is this purely from your observation as a parent or as somebody who has been watching new media and things like that? How exactly because some people, they look at this, they're like, well, these are just some backward people who are intolerant. Does any of that type of stuff that usually is used to talk about critics of this transgender agenda, does that come into any of your philosophy on this?
Well, I wouldn't say that I would get any philosophy from a religion. Not at all. Where I get my opinions on all of this from is from science. And what they don't realize, and what I'll share with you later, is that there is a massive difference between males and females, and not just our junk under our clothes, but in our DNA. And this is going to medically harm people in ways that are unimaginable. And it's actually putting us backwards in time. Because ever since hi, doctor, ever since they discovered that, the Y chromosome and how each of these different DNAs branch off, and how the Y chromosome reads things differently than the X chromosomes. And by that reading of the programming deep inside of us, if we start saying that gender is a social construct and that you can just pick your gender, we're never going to cure some diseases that really do need to be cured. And you don't even have to be a rocket scientist to know that by simply looking back on, I remember the first video I'd watched when I was a child on how the medical industry, has this us by the balls, basically, on Lorenzo's oil, right? There's a disease that only harms little boys. So now imagine that you have a 2-year-old little boy that you let transition into a little girl, and he suddenly comes down with that, but you can't talk about it because you're an intolerant bigot. So everything about this movement has to do with my scientific view. And then secondly, my right to privacy as a woman. There's a man, a rapist, convicted rapist, said he was transgender. He transitioned to woman, got his ghibli bits put off, and now he is in a female prison. A rapist is allowed into a female prison. That is most excellent. If I was a rapist, a serial rapist, and I wanted to still commit crimes, well, now I have my end because everybody's gone effing insane with this crap. Yeah. Sorry.
Let's turn to one of our articles that this is the one that we discussed briefly last time that we exchanged messages. Let me introduce it. It says, "What do we do about women with a penis? The penis in women's spaces, the cotton ceiling, and the definition of womanhood." So, Elicia, I'll let you speak for a second. First glance, when you see that title, and you think about, you go to, let's say, your rec center or wherever you have, what's the reaction of you or, your female company, anybody who hangs out with you, when you see a title like that? What would be your reaction to viewing a naked person with traditionally considered male genitalia in that space.
Did you? I read that and I was floored, and so I went and watched all these videos with the calling them TERFs, you know, obviously a derogatory term, but in Utah this is a non-starter, and the reason being is our exposure laws are really, really strict. And that's why, again, like I've been in this bubble. So if you're over the age of 14, you cannot show any of your junk outside of breastfeeding, right? To anyone under 14. So that would be a man with a penis claiming that it's a vagina goes into a washroom or the local swimming pool. He's going to be charged with a crime, period. No matter what he says, even if he does it, you know, in the male's room, it's illegal. It is illegal. But the delusion of the person in this particular article is beyond stunning. It is beyond stunning. And the way that he wrote it was so forceful. And if you don't toe his line, then you're the bigot. Even though that would be like saying, okay, men, you can all send dick pics to chicks. That's okay. You can flash chicks. That's okay. It's just fine. Or the opposite of that, a woman flashing young boys. I know that I would be pissed if some old hag, 30-year-old old, younger than me, was flashing her privates to my son. I'd put her down. Not like, but like I'd smack her around a couple times because it's wrong.
You would have a testy exchange with her, you're saying?
Exactly, because it's sexualizing children. It's sexualizing children. And aren't there peeping Tom laws? I mean, it's the same thing. I'm not saying that this person is a peeping Tom, but it's the same thing. There's a reason why we segregated bathrooms. It's not because there's a social construct. It's because you're in your most vulnerable state when you're unclothed. And you should be allowed to say who you can enter into your space, your private space. Anyone, males, females, both should have that right to say, hey, you know what? No, I don't want you getting naked around me.
So this article was sent to me to my private Gmail feed from Medium, who, you know, for some reason I got on their mailing list, and we'll read through some of it. But what I got from this is that this person is so paranoid and defensive about using the wrong language because they're afraid of other elements within that movement. So if you will, I'll read through some of it. So it says, a note on virtue signaling and call-out culture. Far too often I see an otherwise good article on YouTube or YouTube video derail into shaming and virtue signaling. The holier-than-thou posture robs the piece of any value. Something that could have been great advice turns into sanctimonious finger-pointing. The problem with this is that the very people the author aims to reach with their plea, the people most in need of that message, are the most likely to shut down or get defensive and reject the whole premise when such call-out language is used. It is my fervent hope in writing this article that I'll manage to escape this trap, manage to communicate my points without positioning myself as, quote, a better human. I'm not or making anyone feel defensive. All of this is simply an invitation to reflection and a plea for more dialogue on the topic. A great model I'm asking the reader to adopt is that of the spinach in my teeth metaphor put forward by Jay Smooth. If someone points out that a behavior is racist, bigoted, or transphobic, you can think of it as someone pointing out you have spinach in your teeth. Rather than angrily fighting back, thank that person for their input and go check in a mirror. You might actually have some dark green on your pearly whites, and rather than feel ashamed, simply remove the spinach and get back to the social occasion. We're living through times of great social change and we're all learning. Let's all practice humility, solidarity, and acceptance. Let's learn from one another. So after that little deprogramming for the Maoist conference that she's having in her head, or you know, this individual, here's the next part of the introduction. It says a quick one question survey. Quote, trans women are women. A, I agree. B, I disagree entirely. Trans women are entitled men invading women's spaces and pose a threat to women. C, I don't fully agree. While I understand some are very feminine, and damn, this is hard to read, and choose to dress and act as women, they're still biologically men. I can humor them on pronouns, but that doesn't magically turn them into women. So they did a little choose your own adventure thing here, saying, based on your wrong beliefs, if you answered A, here's the next part of your programming. If you answered B, go to remedial course 1, and if you answered C, go to remedial course 2. So did you? Now,
I did.
Did you go to? So what's your perception of all this?
I clicked C immediately. Because you're not. You are a guy. Now you can present as a female all you want, but that's not going to change everything. And look look how open-minded this man is that wrote this. Right? It's a man because he says, doesn't he say in it that he's a queer, transgender?
Are you talking about
the author? The author of this is a right.
The author of this piece is a transgender who turned from male to female.
Yeah.
And then is dating or married to a woman.
So a straight man.
A man who considers himself a lesbian or something. Yeah. I don't know. I can't keep up. I get so lost with this crap. And I remember when we were kids, you used to just there was the whole Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, Kindergarten Cop. That was so simple. It was like boys have a penis, girls have a vagina. That was the line. Everybody laughed at it. Nobody got hurt by it. I don't think anybody's ever been offended by Kindergarten Cop. But
wait for it. If it was re-released, it would be.
So what really grabbed your attention in this article? Do you have it up, by the way? I can let you share as well.
I don't have it up, but I took notes. What's funny about the whole situation about you telling me about that article is that I think it was a week ago, I had some older so the older generation, so the baby boomer generation, right? The females in my family really were upset that I wasn't a feminist, and I've never been a feminist, nor would I ever be a feminist. And they couldn't understand it, right? They did not understand it because I was scientifically inclined. I did really well in school. I paid for my schooling off of scholarships and all of this stuff. So they thought I am going to be this beautiful, bright feminist that they can finally say, hey, see, all of our years of hard work was for this. And it was as if I betrayed them when I became a mother and a stay-at-home mom and said outright that I wasn't a feminist. So I thought, well, maybe I'm judging too harshly. And so what I did is I went and watched a bunch of feminist panels where they're talking about, poor feminists and poor females. We're so, the patriarchy, this and that. And it reaffirmed why I would never be a feminist, because the way that they talk about children is absolutely disgusting and disturbing. And it's almost like anti-female to me. And so there was this one little thing, there was this feminist below that said TERF. And I'd heard that term once before when I was doing Jen Smith's essay. Jen Smith is a transgender, right? So he went from presenting as male to presenting as female, but he still calls himself a male because he's a great person. I've been talking to him online. He's the one that's trying to fight this agenda. It's really weird. But anyway, so I'm watching these turf wars of these hardcore feminists going after these transgenders. And it was like the most beautiful thing to watch because they were imploding in on each other. And so when you showed me that article, I was like, obviously, because that author said that his penis was just a different looking vagina. The article says The penis is just a different looking vagina. I can't even fathom the kind of absurdity that is. That's like me saying my nose is really my mouth. No, it's really my mouth. I eat from my nose, right?
Yeah. I think what was that on the optional one, the answer C?
That he said that I don't. It might be screwing with some of the verbiage in two different articles, but it was the cotton ceiling. And when you go into the article, he's talking about that group of women that are standing in a circle because they're gonna it's some weird women's group where everybody sits there and looks at their vaginas, right? Yeah.
Let's read. Let me see if I can find it. Let's read that passage.
That's pretty. And what kills me is they were offended that the women should have a right to be told beforehand. But if I was going to be doing some weird female thing where we're examining our lady parts and all of a sudden someone pops out their Ghibli bits, I'd be like, whoa, what's going on here?
Well, let's have the audience read this with us. And do you want to narrate or should I? Actually,
you go for it. I've talked. You go for it.
Okay. It may not be as feminine as it would with you, but that's a social construct. So we'll just let the audience deal with it. So I'll try. It says, the women's circle. In a grassy area by the river, 20 women stand in a circle. They're in a women's retreat. They've gathered for a radical body positive exercise. The exercise centers on the yoni, the tantric word for a women's genitalia. I'm assuming that's in Sanskrit, and will include nudity and self-exploration. By the way, I know some dudes named Yoni. I think I'll let them know that. 19 of these women are vulva-clad, vagina-equipped, natal cisgender women. One of these women is trans. While she might not refer to her genitals by the words penis or testicles, that's what they are anatomically. And though transformed by several years of female hormones, her genitals are likely to be understood as male genitals by most women present. This is the challenge we face. Do we allow the trans gal to participate in the exercise, which includes shedding all clothes and touching one's genitals? Or this is basically a women's circle jerk. Am I correct? Elise?
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry.
Is this basically a women's circle jerk, or am I?
You know what it reminds me of? Have you watched that movie, Fried Green Tomatoes? When Kathy Bates, she's kind of going through a midlife crisis, and so then she joins this women's group, and they go, today we're going to be exploring our vaginas, and so they bring out the mirrors to use to look and stuff. But I would never do something like that. That's a little bit weird.
Kathy Bates, that's a pretty harsh image in my head. If you'll excuse me.
You're welcome.
or do we specifically exclude her for fear of triggering one or more of the other women? As a facilitator of sex-positive events, I've agonized over this question. It doesn't help that I happen to be trans myself. I've recently reached out to my friend Jimena Alvarado, PhD, a Portland-based professor of feminism and social justice, what used to be called women's studies. Jimena was happy to dissect this with me. She said, my predisposition is always to lift up the voices of the most marginalized, Jimena told me. From Jimena's model, excluding the trans woman is untenable. So she went to one authority who is a PhD in whatever the fuck it's called now in Portland. And that's it, sold to, basically that's how she decided it. So then she said, so it becomes a question of managing the expectations of the other participants. It's up to the organizer, the event leader, Jimena said. They should have framed the event in such a way that all present understand and agree with that inclusivity. So I think that gives us enough of a mental image of, these women who are probably, they're showing up for, and I think it is kind of strange in and of itself, but it's like, it's like that movie Eyes Wide Shut with Tom Cruise, where it's like, one level of effed up, and then, it's like effed up turned up to 11, like in Spinal Tap. That's the way I look at it. So any other things that really stood out to you, no pun intended, from this from this piece?
Well, what really stands out is when you read it, I don't think that he is actually kidding. I think, sadly, I think he believes what he wrote. And that in itself is terrifying. Never before in history have we just taken on some kind of weird, sad, morbid, like what happened to you to make you think that a penis is a vagina? I can't even wrap my head around it. Could you wrap your head around that? Because did he not seem like he believed everything he was saying?
I think it's beyond that. It's both that and the fact that they're from the language they were using, it's like they were walking through a minefield.
Yeah.
It was incredibly hypersensitive towards anybody that might object, and it shows really, in my opinion, and I don't know this person. I could care less what I have. To be honest with you, I've never been a supporter of any gay rights or anything. I've always thought it's kind of a joke. We should be able to make fun of whoever we want to, and vice versa. But I don't really care what this person does. So I think these are people that they're basically, like you're saying, they're fighting with people within their own camp of society over the scraps. Like you said, with the turf wars and whatever. It's bizarre. It makes them look ridiculous to people on the outside, and it shows that you're looking at really a speech policing that goes down to the most minute detail.
Well, the real problem comes, though. The real problem comes that they have billionaire backers behind them, and now it's indoctrination in schools, not just colleges. I know everybody thinks that this is only for college campuses. Australia just rolled out what's called the RRRR and Safe Schools program. And I've been working with Australia parents because Australia has hate speech laws. And so I feel like as an American, I think it's our duty to speak out for them when they can't talk about certain things, if you know what I mean. And I have every year from kindergarten to 12th grade, I have every single lesson in these programs. And what they're doing is they're selling all of this madness in the schools. Like I pulled something up right here. If you ever want to learn what kids are learning, you can find PDFs online all the time. You just have to know what the school program is called. And the best way to find that, if you don't know what the title of it is you can use this program called Quizlet. And what they do is this is how teenagers cheat in school now, because they write out all the test questions or quiz questions or assignment questions. And so just a small example, I'm going to show you what they're being taught. So this is under chapter 6. This is for 8th grade. I don't know what the book is called. I didn't have time to find it. But the title of it is Gender, right? And this is what the kids are learning. An aspect of identity that we make when we act or speak in ways that show our sense of what it means to be, make, or female in our society. Gender is a social construct with very real consequences to health. Added complexities based on class, race, age, nationality, sexual orientation, and other identities. Gender, the social and cultural significance that we attach to presumed biological differences. And so they are teaching children that there are no biological differences. And all you have to do, scientifically, hop onto the Human Genome Project, right? And it will explain simply, DNAexplained.com. And you have, oh God, I can't see the Dr. David Page. He's the one that's really been working on the Y chromosomes. And he said that males are 99.9 the same as other males, right? And females are 99.9 the same as other females. But males to females, there's only 98.5. And what he does is he explains that a female or a male is more genetically similar to a monkey than to each other. And they go into all of so it's not the XY isn't just our junk. It's not just our junk. It has everything to do with sickness, how we perceive the world. And because we've taken on this model of men and women are equal when we're not, and that's okay. It's okay to say, you know what, we're not equal. The rose and the tulip aren't equal, and that's okay. That we're harming ourselves on researching diseases, especially like lupus affects women more, as he says, rheumatoid arthritis affects women more, but say autism affects males more. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's not, if this was just about them being their authentic self and walking around sounding like lunatics, that would be one thing. But it would be like somebody saying that we're going to start teaching flat earth in school now.
Yeah, I think it's very telling that, in fact, I had an argument yesterday. I happen to be Jewish, and somebody was saying, well, the Jews are a race, we're Semites. I said, no, we're not, we're a religion. And then they're arguing with me. I said, okay, so because they were using the example of Down syndrome in European Jews to say, well, because there's so many Down syndrome sufferers among this group, then it must be a race. I said, okay, so therefore, will you agree? I showed them a picture of Caitlyn Jenner. Would you agree that genetically this cannot be a woman? And they wouldn't answer. It was hilarious. They never can. It's all about obfuscating, and they won't have I'm glad that obviously if this was a religious issue, I'd also accept it, but I think we're both talking on a scientific level with respect to gender. There's a lot of neurological and physiological differences, especially with hormones and with all of the associated processes that happen through puberty. We took it for granted that that's what you learned when you were, in school. That defined what a male child and human is, and what a female child or human is, and I think that I like it that you're really focusing on the educational implications of this, because some people think, well, it doesn't affect really you. It only affects the people that are involved. But you're saying that truly these people are pushing this type of rhetoric in the school systems.
Oh yeah. I'm lucky. I'm not lucky. I planned my life where I could raise and take care of my children, and homeschooling was the best thing that I could have ever done. And when you go down this wormhole, the ethical issues start coming into play, because we found one billionaire who he's claiming to be a transgender. He's one of the top paid female CEOs in America. He's only doing it because he goes to he started I wish I wrote it down, but he started a movement where he's actually a transhumanist. And so his agenda is to, get people comfortable with transgender, and then we go into transhumanist. And in that, sorry, I haven't said hi to anyone. I'm going to say hi to everybody. Hello, everybody that's here. Hello. Anyway, when you start finding out that there's cult-like people at play that have all this money, then it gets really terrifying, because, at least like from a scientific point and a crazy point, we might have a stance. But when you find rich billionaires that are in a cult, you go, oh, well, this just took on a whole new meaning.
Yes, so before we depart the article, it's interesting to note. So there's a lot of imagery in the article that indicates, I think what they're trying to do, personally, I don't know if you agree with me, but hear me out for a second, Elicia. So I believe that they are trying to lure women to become comfortable with something that, in point of fact, in reality, apparently they would not be comfortable with. So if you look at the imagery here, you see, this lady over here, very, not connected to the article, by the way. Very nice photograph, very aesthetic, very, very good. A yoga class illustrating a public women's space. By the way, though, you could have men in a yoga class, so why should we assume that it's an all women's yoga class? You could have a mixed gender yoga class. What they're trying to say is that in a single gendered yoga class, they should also accept transgender women. And then here's somebody who I don't think we're allowed to mention by name on YouTube, or else we get banned. And then I've heard stories.
The R word.
So here is a lady in a point of ecstasy, trying to gin it up. And here's a pair of very would you say that these are some very bonny lassies over here? And all through the article, you assume maybe the writer will reveal something about themselves. I can show you. This is what the author looks like in real life.
Oh my gosh!
This is, I mean, what the? What?
Is that the author?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Oh.
So they're writing. They're basically what do you call it? Catfishing the entire transgender and women community to think, oh, it's going to be so great. We're all. I mean, I can assume. I go to the gym. I go to the men's dressing section, and there are dudes I don't want to look at. I actually don't. Often I'll just shower at home because, and I don't care if people think it's insecure for men to do that. There's a lot of dudes that are just ugly. It's a fact. A lot of dudes just look disgusting. In fact, I'd probably say 99% of dudes in the world are I would never, it's like, and some people might think differently, but that's the way I feel when I go to the gym. But she's trying to make it feel like, oh, when you go to these public spaces, you're going to have all these beautiful colors of the spectrum of transgenderism. But I mean, you look at a photo of this person, and it looks like somebody who sells you cigarettes by the train station. So, maybe I'm being superficial.
No, I think you're right. I did not it would have been more, the article would have been able to be sold a little bit better if let's say it was a man that was presenting himself as a beautiful woman. I think that would have been easier. But when you see that creepy dude, no offense to dudes, you guys know I love you dudes, I love you. But when you see a creepy looking dude like that saying, it's okay, my junk is the same, and you should look at it, it's as if he is a peeping Tom, like a peeping perverted Tom that hides in the outhouses to sneak a glimpse at a woman because that's all he's going to see. Oh, I cannot believe he looked like that. That's just, oh.
I think everybody. I don't think people have to be totally obsessed with looks and being looking good. But I mean, let's be honest here. The whole thing in this discussion is about how comfortable people should feel in places where you undress and are exposed to other people. And if you look at feminist writings, a lot of them talk about body sensitivity and stuff like that. So that it's actually natural among people of both genders to have body sensitivity. I have a lot of extra pounds. I have those mountain Ukrainian and Iraqi genes, so I'm pretty much hairy like like a thorn bush. That's what I look like. It's, sorry for the image, but everybody has something they're self-conscious about with their body. And what she's trying to do is say, forget about the most obvious one that's kind of a boundary between nudity. We don't want women and men showering together, especially at a young age, which probably will be the next frontier that they engage in. We want people to grow up and learn about sexuality and think of it in a more mature way when they're ready for it. And would you say you see things like specifically what was in this article being peddled in your schools? Does that remind you of what you mentioned earlier?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Okay, so anybody that follows me knows I get a little bit conspiracy, but I always back my stuff up with proof. But I found it's not even, this is what kills me. It's not even the T's that are doing it. It's the Q's that are doing this. And what they're trying to do is, I think that, and the feminists have only themselves to blame because they're the ones that said that gender was a social construct and pushed that, is that I see that the only way that they're going to get equal outcome, right? Equal outcome, because that's what they want, is I think they finally understood that men and women are different. And so now what they're going to have to do to make their weird utopia, dystopia, whatever you want to call it, is turn enough chicks into dudes and enough dudes into chicks. And the only way to do that is to start brainwashing children at a young age. But at the same time, you have the pedophiles, which my few fans watching right now know that we've gone in depth, where there are scholars, pedophile scholars that have infiltrated as well. And so you have them saying, well, this gender thing is wonderful because if a 4-year-old can choose their gender, then surely a 4-year-old can choose who they can date and things like this. And it is being pushed online. It is already being pushed online. So you have these weird billionaire freaking transhumanists, you've got these weird pedophiles, then you've got these cultural Marxists coming in that are queer, and they've taken this movement, turned it into this monster, and now they somehow got it into the schools. How the hell did they get it into the schools?
Yeah, I think that this has been a process that's been in place for a very long time. There's a guy who his name was Harry Hay. I read about him a few years ago. He was involved in the gay rights movement too, and it said, I mean, he was a communist. You can see him here in this lovely thing, the guy eventually became a member of one of these groups that was pro pedophilia, and a lot of this stuff is converging, and I think it's good to have people who are finally pointing out the implications of this, that once they start talking about age of consent laws, once they start talking about your children and what's taught and all of that, I think that they've crossed the line between what's private and what's social. And there was recently that movie. I don't remember what it was called, to the point of A. Pinochet, who brought it up in the chat, and you replied to him as well.
Pinochet. Yeah. I just made a video on the Amos Yee thing. Dude, go over and watch it after this is over, because I was so happy. That little pedophile pusher is a communist. Sorry, you obviously you don't like communism, right?
You might want to ask my audience. I'm pretty unequivocal about that. Yeah, I just had an argument with somebody yesterday where they were, well, okay. Long story short, I'm pretty anti-communist. Yeah.
Yay!
Nice.
You're like, okay.
I think it should be a basic thing here. I think that's my opinion. I think that's what's it. If you believe in this country, you don't believe in what's going to destroy it. Yeah. So keep going. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh no, sorry, I interrupted you, but I wanted to tell Pinochet that I was so happy that Amos came out as a communist because it's so funny. Also, if you look at a lot of like RevCom, they have their entire communist constitution already written out, and what they want to do is they want to force schooling as young as 3, and basically, use children. And it's all yeah, I mean, I think the more of us that talk out and speak out against this stuff, I think the better off we will be because when you study how when you study enough mind washing and brain control and all of that crap, you see that a lot of the times the most effective way of behavior control comes from peer pressure. And so as long as enough people are speaking out against it, then we won't have to worry about the peer pressure so much. So sorry.
Yes, there was a film this year in the Academy Awards, or as they now call it, the show nobody watched, called "Call Me by Your Name," and that was all about a relationship between a person who was an adult and a minor, a gay relationship that almost won the. I think it did win an award. I don't remember which one. Let me see here. Awards, whatever. Who cares? Those awards don't mean shit anymore. So who cares? There was also. I was actually using this to troll somebody earlier. There was The Shape of Water. So that was about a relationship between a woman and a fish man. So that's what's winning awards now in Hollywood. Movies about crap that God knows who thought it up. How about we shift gears for a second? There was a story yesterday, not related to transgenders, but related to politics and identity politics. Christine Quinn, the former city council president of New York City, she greeted the announcement by a lesbian, Cynthia Nixon, that she's running for mayor of New York City by saying that she was an unqualified lesbian that wouldn't support a qualified lesbian for mayor of New York City. She said, and that's right here, that Cynthia Nixon was opposed to having a qualified lesbian become mayor of New York City. Now she wants to be an unqualified lesbian to be the governor of New York. Elicia, as just a person observing from the side, or as a woman, what type of reaction do you have when this type of stuff is used as a political a piece of rhetoric and response to an event by a politician, no less?
I think it kind of breaks my heart because at what point in our lives did we, when we're running for office, that we were like, oh, hey, I'm a heterosexual man and I've been married for 10 years and this, that, and the other. It's like it's almost like they're forcing everybody to talk about private issues that shouldn't be shared. Whatever happened to intimacy? There's intimacy is so important and so beautiful, and it's like we're losing it. We're losing it now. And you can go anywhere on the internet, and just people are just it. It breaks my heart. I mean, I feel betrayed by the feminists. I feel betrayed by all of it. The entire 60s, I think they totally screwed us all over. Seriously. I don't know what they put in the water, but something bad happened. Very bad.
Yeah. For me, reading that response, I thought it was kind of what really seems to me is the problem is, New York City and New York State, they have all these issues with. By the way, New York City, the mayor is fighting with the current governor, Cuomo, who's running for re-election. Mayor de Blasio is fighting with Cuomo and trying to get subway money. So basically, Cuomo sicked Christine Quinn, who's the gay former city council member, to fight against Cynthia Nixon, who is de Blasio's lesbian. So it's like that they're using these lesbians as attack dogs. And very ironically, it's like one of those 70s exploitation films. And what's very what's stupid about it and kind of tragic is that they used to say, well, nobody has the right to tell us what to do in our bedroom, but in this case, these women, or Christine Quinn, because Cynthia Nixon didn't make an issue out of it, but she's basically making Cynthia Nixon's habits in the bedroom her business, because for some reason she feels slighted that she didn't get her support when she was running for mayor.
That's so messed up.
So another, yeah, there's so many. I mean, I made a lot of jokes about it last night on my feature story about it. So there's also so before we get to the Women's March, I'm sure you have a couple opinions on that. Here's a story from Mom Zet, which is part of the Life Zet platform. It's a more conservative publication, but it says Mount Holyoke College says you can't call their students women anymore. They are an all-women's college. So I believe that they are admitting transsexual people. You know, in my day, they used to say transsexual. How about you? Did you used to say transsexual? I'm going back to saying it, you know.
I think, yeah, they used to say transsexual, and all of a sudden it just disappeared, which I think is strange, you know, that it suddenly disappeared. But I think it's
so let me just read through the rest of this. It says, in other words, in an all-women's college, you should no longer call a woman a woman. Go figure. In an effort to promote a so-called gender-neutral environment, officials at Mount Holyoke College, with a population of about 2,200 students, created the Supporting Trans and Non-Binary Students Guide, which is found on the school's website under the, quote, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the classroom section. To an outsider, the effort seems like wasted energy, especially considering that the admissions team at Mount Holyoke does not keep track of how many students self-identify as trans or non-binary, and that the school student population is quite small. Strangely, though, the college's homepage reads, imagine if every day were International Women's Day. It appears that not everyone at the school got the memo about rejecting the word women around the campus, across the campus. LifeZet reached out to Mount Holyoke for clarification and comment, but did not hear back before publication. And then you see this wrestler at the bottom. You probably know that story. I think it was a woman who is becoming a man that won a wrestling tournament in Texas, I believe.
Yeah, 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
2 years in a row. You get in trouble for doping, but it's okay to use testosterone. I actually enjoy seeing stuff like that because it's waking people up to it. Also, I enjoy the fact knowing that the Olympics is allowing for men to compete as women. I know of several volleyball players that were men. All they have to do is take 1 year of estrogen. That's it. You don't even have to get rid of your ghibli bits, which that's a win-win. I mean, think about it. You could, and that's what they're doing. It's opportunistic, and I hope it speeds up a little bit so that we can just get it over and done with. Like, this is like some kind of weird sickness, you know, like a phase that society's going through. We're going through that phase, and I just wanted to get it over with. And the more men that play women's sports and obliterate the women, the more that I think men will start coming to the defense of women again, which is good because we need a reset, because the feminists have totally belittled and destroyed men's being men. And so it'll give men the opportunity to be men again. It'll give women the opportunity to be women again. The gender spectrum will fall by the wayside, and feminism will be over, and we can all celebrate. Right? Anyone?
Amen.
Anyone?
Yeah, exactly. So I think here's a couple more paragraphs here. It says, Michelle Rotella, a medical doctor based in Providence, Rhode Island, and the president of the American College of Pediatrics, called out Mount Holyoke's efforts for what they really are, more of the same PC that has turned liberal arts colleges today into indoctrination and recruitment. So this is a doctor, a pediatrician. So, and recruitment centers for the left, mainstream academia, medicine, psychology, and law have sacrificed morality and therefore inevitably science and sanity too on the altar of political correctness. She told LifeZette in an email. Oh man, there's a buttload of other paragraphs here. So, so how about Elicia, the Women's March? So you're from the mountain area, Rocky Mountain area.
Utah.
Yeah, Utah. So, home of Mitt Romney and briefly.
He is not from Utah. Just because he's a Mormon, if he is not a Utahn.
Are you Latter-day Saints or are you're?
I'm going to tell you what I tell all of my followers. I will admit whatever my religion is when somebody guesses it, but no, my name is not in the Book of the Lamb. So as soon as someone guesses it, I will actually say it, but I have yet anybody.
I'll send you a Twitter private message.
No,
but some other time.
I know you're curious. Everybody's curious. Yeah. I think I'm going to wait till I get to getting close to like 5,000 followers, and I'll be like, let's get over that hump. I'll tell you what my religion is finally, like some big surprise. But you know what? I did want to say something about this transgender movement, and I've been thinking a lot about it, and I don't want to forget it. So I know the Women's March, we're going to talk about that in just a second, but I was trying to figure out why all of us are so upset about it, because there is really this kind of repellent when you see it. There's this kind of pain, disgust, not the same kind of disgust. Like if you see, like, let's say you see gay porn and you're not into it, you'd be like, oh, but the actual, this movement to say I'm a female, even though you're not a female, I think I finally understand it. What humans hate most is when people lie to them. And they lie to them to their face. And then not only are they lying to them, but they're also saying that you're crazy for not believing what they believe. So it's like, it's because they're lying, and then they're trying to gaslight us. And then in the final nail in the coffin, why it's so repellent, is that they're telling us that what we see isn't real. And it was really important for me to understand that, because they are lying. They're flat out lying, and nobody likes that. But sorry. So I want to lose my point, but the Women's March. I can't hear you.
Yeah, the Women's March is they're holding the anti-gun march, I think, next week or it might be, I think the 24th is Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. But in any case, they're holding this anti-gun march, and they're already suffering these divisions. It says why this black girl will not be returned in the Women's March. So after, a long diatribe, she says Teresa Shook, the retired attorney and grandmother from Hawaii, took her outrage over Trump's win to the one place we all go to air out our grievances, Facebook, creating an event calling for women to march on Washington in protest of the newly elected president. Shook has since been credited for igniting the spark that eventually became the record-breaking Women's March, originally called the Million Women March, but later changed after it was brought to organizers' attention that black women had organized and marched under that name in 1997. Read on for full appreciation of the irony. The Women's March drew millions of women and allies in cities across the world, all united in protest against the new administration and its policies. In Los Angeles alone, it is estimated that 350,000 people attended the march, and I was one of them. When my friend asked me to go to the march with her, I didn't hesitate. Unlike many others in attendance that day, the Women's March was not my first time at the social activism rodeo. As an undergraduate law student, I joined in protests against my alma mater's apathetic, borderline non-existent policies regarding minority enrollment and retention and incidents of racism on campus. And in my adult life, so she's not an adult in undergraduate and law student. That's what she's trying to say. Even though you should be an adult by the time you're in law school, I think. So she says, I've marched against police brutality and the killing of unarmed Black and brown people too many times. I have always been a seeker of social equity and justice, not just through organized protest, but through my career and involvement in community-based organizations. So, you know, she's going through the whole thing. And doing some research on the Women's March and learning that some of its organizers were women of color with impressive backgrounds in human rights and social justice, I was further encouraged to attend. We arrived at the march, I with my sign in tow that read in bold letters, "Not my president, sincerely a nasty woman and member of the African Americans," a snarky reference to Trump's misogynistic and ignorant comments while on the campaign trail. I don't see what's misogynistic about the African Americans. So then she says, we were overwhelmed by the sheer number of people present. The streets of downtown LA were so congested. At times, it felt as if we had been dropped in the middle of a mosh pit. As the march got underway, a couple of women complimented me on my sign. Yes, they exclaimed while pumping their fists. Nasty women unite. This happened a few more times, and I immediately noticed it. The 9 or 10 white women had gone out of their way to compliment my sign, only acknowledge the nasty woman reference. They offered no remarks about the equally bold and visible, the African Americans. In fact, the only people who said anything about that part of my sign were Black women who raised fists, told me they loved it, and even asked to take pictures with the sign. I could feel a mixture of disappointment and annoyance bubble to the surface. So are you reading into this what I'm reading, Elicia? The point is that she's so sensitive about racism that even when white people look at her sign and don't acknowledge the fact that it says African American on it, she thinks that that's racist, even though they're voicing their support and raising their stupid fists to it. So that's basically that's the Women's March. If there's no reason to complain, they'll make up a reason.
Yeah, it's really strange. It's really strange. I think that's why I've been going deeper and deeper into the cult aspects of it. But it really has become it's the vindictive butt mentality, right? Vindictive, the root word when you're looking at it means that someone that feels wronged and must have vengeance, even though they haven't been wronged. It's this big competition. They are eating each other alive. It's fantastic. It's quite entertaining. Like I'm telling you, the last 24 hours, I haven't even made a video in a few days because I've been so fascinated by these groups eating each other, and it's fabulous. It's entertaining. It's very entertaining. But it's just history repeating itself. But luckily, we have the internet. Thank God for the internet, because I think we would be screwed. I don't. It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. Well, and you said you were a Jew, right? Right? You said
last
you were.
Time I checked. Yeah.
Okay. So what fascinates me? So my friend, Analytical Chick, she's a Jew as well. I had sent to her this nasty, really long, nasty comment given to me by someone on the left, because traditionally people on the left weren't. They were all about protecting the Jewish people. But
please share.
It was well. You know, what are you gonna do?
Oh, is there
they were saying nasty stuff, and they were basically saying that you guys are just exactly as oppressive and mean as the evil white guys. And I found it fascinating because they're basically putting the Jews and the Nazis in the same exact group. And I found that most fascinating. And I told my friend, I was like, what is this shit about? I don't understand it. But they're so into this victimhood mentality that the insanity is, I'm almost done. I'll be right out. Sorry. The kids are getting restless. No, you can't. You're naked. Ah!
All right, well.
Hold on, let me.
All right, I have the camera off of you, so.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so it's this it's this just growing. It's so sad, and it breaks my heart when. Doesn't it break your heart, the madness of it all?
I don't feel like very heartbroken because I've always looked at it as, you know, people. There's always like people that are going to be negative and hate something about anything, and I've always been kind of negative myself. So, you know, I think it's kind of natural. I used to be somebody who considered myself on the left like a long time ago, probably before Al Gore kind of changed my mind because he was such a moron. And you know, after that, I kind of drifted and I became, you know, I decided, you know, once I heard about Ron Paul, somebody who says people should mind their own business and not screw around and force other people to do things. And you know, John Stossel and Larry Elder and a number of other people, I decided I don't care if people hate me. That's why, you know, the last thing we're going to talk about, Farrakhan feminism, which is the project I'm working on. It kind of brings together all of the contradictions that you're talking about, because you have here, this is a nation of Islam. This is what Farrakhan, Louis Farrakhan, the leader of the Nation of Islam, he's worked his entire life in it, or since the 1950s, and they've hosted actual neo-Nazis. But when Elijah Muhammad was the leader, they had an alliance with them. But here are some of his comments. He says, so, you know, I made a few observations. You know, Farrakhan is so sexist, he makes Howard Stern look like Justin Trudeau. Because in this clip from the 80s, and I have video, so anybody who watches it can go click on it and hear Farrakhan in his own words. And thank you, YouTube, for not censoring Louis Farrakhan, because you would not know that he rebuked men that allowed women to be the breadwinner in the household. He yelled at women who can't cook as being lazy and unfit to be mothers and wives. He said the exact same thing in 2013 in the clip. And yet there is a leader of the Women's March who openly admires him, she said that he's the greatest of all time. She's worked in the Obama White House. She's been or with Joe Biden, excuse me, with Vice President Biden. So that's what you're talking about. He also has said things that are very anti-gay. He said in 1972 that homosexuality is unnatural. And I don't care. I'm fine with him saying that. But this is the Women's March we're talking about. They're supposed to hold themselves to that progressive standard, and they have people who associate with them. He vocally condemned President Barack Obama for endorsing gay marriage in 2012, using Sodom and Gomorrah as a parable, just like, you know, Pat Robertson probably would. He said things like he would lift up Pope John Paul II's skirt and show exactly who he is. He's made very strong anti-Catholic and anti-Islamic statements in the past. He said he used to feud with Muslim leaders, you know, ones that are members of Sunni Islam, which is traditional Islam, as well as Shia Islam. So he was yelling at them, and I have the video. Just like you, I use sources. I try to go for direct sources. He said, "Who do you think brought the Quran to us?" And he called he called the leaders of the Arab nations a group of faggots for not standing up to the U.S. And you know, how much less progressive can you get than this guy? And people only complain about the fact that he hates the Jews, which, you know, it's not nice. But you can be a feminist, and I mean, would you agree with me? You can be a feminist and not like the Jews, but you can't be a feminist and think that women who can't cook are unfit to be mothers. What do you think about all that information that I kind of dropped on you?
Everything you said is absolutely correct, because I mean, if you take religion just at its face value and say, okay, I don't like the Jews because of their religion, I don't like the Muslims because of their religion, you're still a female, you're still going after your own interests. But to actually to say those things, it's this madness. I'm telling you, it is this weird madness. Like when they let the rapists in the female prison, even though he cut off his junk, but that's not, do they not understand? It makes me ashamed to be a woman. We're not this stupid. Why are we acting so stupid? Why are they acting so stupid? That it really is. It comes down to that. Why are they acting so stupid? Are they so caught up in their agenda that they can't see how stupid they're being? Of course not. Of course not. I watched a famous feminist, this one I really dislike. She was sitting there saying gender is a social construct as she's arguing with a transgender, and but at the same time she's then saying he can't call himself a female, but she just said that there's no such thing as woman and man, but he can't call himself a woman. That's really stupid, don't you think? That doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, if all of that is a social construct, I mean, I've done things where I remember this was over 2 years ago, and you know, this was before I was doing YouTube or anything, and I was just strolling online. There was a transgender video on, it just pops up on your Facebook, and talking about, oh, how transgender people they face so many problems. So you know, I put you know, kind of as a joke, I said, you know, I'm trans river otter. I'm currently going through the sea otter transition, and you know, that's like a intermediate point to become a river otter, because before you become a sea otter, you have to go through the river, which is freshwater, and then develop the saltwater and what, you know, I just made up some complete bullshit. Complete total bullshit. Somebody took me seriously. They're like, you know, there's actually things like that with people who believe they can become animals. I didn't know what to respond to. I was like, can't you tell that I'm completely pulling all this out of my ass? Are you that dumb? And no, they're like, oh, no, that it really exists. And they shared a video, and I'm like, yeah, I was like, this is this is really, you know, this is truly a world where people have grown up reading Harry Potter and believing all the, and you know, read the book. I think it's a stupid book personally, but you know, people are entitled to read the book, but it doesn't apply to real life. All of this fantasy stuff about people being able to change what they are and their biology.
It's sad. It really is. And I think we'll get to a point where the madness stops, but I think it's going to take, well, you know, a tipping point, right? Just like the liberty movements and all of that, it'll take a tipping point. So I think it's good that people like us continuously speak out, show people, let them know that no, this isn't a game. It may have been a game, but now it's getting serious, and just expose every little fracture that we can, you know. I think that's the best way to do it, because there is no other way to do it. We have to, it's the starfish story, right? Save one starfish at a time. That's all we got.
So I guess I'll let you have the last word, even though that kind of did sound like a last word. But what do you think is the way forward? You know, towards that tipping point. Are you involved in political organization of any type? And what about, you know, getting your voice out there, given all the problems with YouTube? And you know, by the way, I'm happy to, you know, share this video with anybody, and including for you to mirror it. And you know, I'm happy to help you in any way to keep sharing your content.
Sweet. I'll never quit YouTube, even if they destroy my channel. I'll keep going, because this is it's like a country now. So every platform is its own country. It just happens to be online, so I'll never quit it. But I think the way forward is we have to. It's kind of like we have to find the in. We have to expose it from the inside out, and that's why I made friends with Jen Smith. Because there are genuine transgenders that are completely against the transgender movement, you know. Mm-hmm. And I think if you go to the heart of it, also, we need to start teaching our young ladies that this is not the road to go. And I've been teaching my younger daughters how to speak up, but tactfully, with their younger friends, because it's really Generation Z 2.0 that's going to be affected by this. And so what we need to do as parents, any parent, is we need to teach our children how to subtly say small little things, be careful so they don't get their asses kicked, right? I mean, it's like, you got to be careful, But I think that's going to be the only way to change it. Also, any story you see about any of these people doing bad things is good, because we need to show that no, we're not equal, and that's okay. It's okay not to be equal. We don't all have fabulous hair. It's fine.
Okay, so that was the utterly intolerable and completely bigoted Elicia Clegg. Please subscribe to her channel on YouTube and on social media. Where else can we find you?
I'm on Minds. Love
Oh
me
yeah,
my
yeah, I'm on
Minds.
Minds too. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm on Minds. I don't do the Twitter, even though I'm on Twitter. I don't do the Twitter. I don't. I share stuff, but it's not like I'm not engaging very much on Twitter. I'm thinking where I need to go is Tumblr, because that's where all the crazies are. I do have a Tumblr. That's where I need to be. But the best place is Minds, I think, because yeah, Minds, Google Plus. Get me on Google Plus, and of course Facebook. But I don't know.
Yeah, Facebook sucks now. Twitter's not. Twitter kind of sucks too, but I've never been fond of it. And BitChute I'm on now, so hopefully,
I get in the BitChute.
yeah, I'm getting into BitChute. Getting subscribers is kind of slow, but it's totally worth it, and it's a different way to share. So
Yeah.
anyway, again, it's they've already taken deplorable, but it's the intolerable Elicia Clegg and the completely sexist and discriminating Bold Like a Leopard signing off. Have a great evening, and I hope you share this with your friends and subscribe to both of us.